Good evening. This is the October 5th, 2022 WMGLD Commissioners meeting. And at 6:30 now, at 6:32 right now, we're calling the meeting to order. And I wanted to announce that this meeting is being recorded. In terms of chair's remarks, I just had one email to read that we received from a customer, but I think I will read it during public. Can I read it during public comment?
Sure.
Okay. I will read it during public comment. So I don't have any other remarks. Does anybody else do the other commissioners have any reports? No commissioner reports. Looking around, and I do not see our town council liaison with us tonight. And I do not see any members of the public on the line. Nobody would have joined by phone that we can't see, correct? See them there? Okay, so for public comments, I'm just going to read into the record an email that all the commissioners received from Pete Davis. Says, dear WMGLD Board of Commissioners, thank you for all your hard work and to everyone you work with at WMGLD. Every day I feel lucky that we have the best utility in the Commonwealth, especially when something goes wrong and the power is out only for minutes, or when I look at my bill and compare to the sticker shock others experience for the big utility companies. I'm writing with some suggestions for improvements to our energy efficiency programs. I realize we have a much smaller budget to work with from our ratepayers, and based on our surcharges, that limits what we have budget to do. One area where I would have liked to see some improvements is on the annual $2,500 cap. This hit me when I moved in because I added slit ductless heat pumps and then had almost no money left to cover my air sealing project that I would have been better off punting to another year, since it would have let me get back over $1,000 more in incentives. At this point, any change to the program wouldn't help me personally in any significant way, but I think it would be great to do anything you can to encourage more adoption of electric heat pumps and installation projects by removing additional barriers if your program budget is sufficient to support this. Clearly, we're not even close to big utilities on the incentives for installing heat pumps by thousands of dollars, but even Reading is now offering $1,000 per ton for heat pumps with a $6,000 cap versus our $500 a ton, $2,000 cap in a new system. My energy audit revealed that I should add some insulation to my attic, but given the ever-increasing cost of insulation and the $1,500 cap on insulation projects, it will not pay for itself in savings of my bill. So without a significant increase in incentives for insulation, it simply doesn't make sense. And my understanding is we are going to talk about our energy efficiency programs potentially next month. Yeah. So unless anyone has any comments to offer now, we can always discuss that when we have this topic on our agenda.
I would just reiterate that that's very similar to the comment I had last month with regard to the heat pump incentive for low income customers. Where I think that those numbers, if you're offered a couple $1,000 to someone who's low income, it's not going to be sufficient for them to do. I mean, I would love to put those in, but I couldn't afford it on 2,000. So it's something that we should definitely keep in mind next month when we discuss.
Okay. Should we go to the approval of the September 7th meeting minutes? Does anyone have additional comments to offer that were not emailed and captured in these updated minutes?
Council, comments from Jen and Jack, I think. They're on Jen, so I'm sorry.
I just have on page 8, right at the bottom, it says double stated rebates. And at first I didn't know what that meant. I circled it. And then later on the next page it says double rebates. So I guess stated, I don't know what that means, stated rebates, but double the current rebates, is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's the proposed plans, we're gonna double them, but I don't know how I got the wording might be a little Yeah, I just didn't know it's stated.
Double the current rebates instead of stated?
I don't remember who made the comments, so I don't know who's coming.
So you're saying somebody offered that comment?
Well, this was in, I think this is when Joe was going through the,
proposal for the
Joe Collins said the program is designed to, yeah. He led us, he led us through the bullet points of the program. So this was Joe kind of speaking about the program.
Maybe just double the existing rebates, is that?
Double,
Okay with that?
yeah.
Double the existing rebates.
Do we change the bullet from the bullet on page 9 to read the same way then? Doubling based on solar panel.
That makes sense. I got something on page 10 that I didn't quite understand. Just, halfway down under number 2, electric. The second sentence is the 2 mat transformer replacements, and I just was, what is mat? Is that a typo or is that?
No, it's mat, it's a construction called mat and fence, where you take an overhead transformer and you put it on a concrete mat. And that's what you serve the building with, and we have 2 of those left. Last year, if you remember, we did one at Anton's Cleaners. I included pictures on the board, but it used to have 3 overhead transformers sitting on the ground, and we took that out and replaced it. So we have 2 more installations of that kind of construction.
Oh, okay, I thought those were always pad mount.
There's pad mounts, and then there's these mat and fence installations.
Something else?
It's
What
that
about the transformers that are put inside?
fence.
Chain link cages.
Okay.
So that it's a type of construction that we're trying to get rid of, and we still have 2 left. And what we were saying is that we weren't going to get them this year.
Okay. That's all I have.
Make a motion to approve the September 7, 2022 minutes as amended.
I'll stop it.
Commissioner Badger.
Aye.
Commissioner Gillette. Commissioner Christie. Commissioner Wood.
No doubt.
But we can just take the votes, but we don't have to poll anymore. You can just say all in favor. Aye. We don't need to do, the only thing we need to do a roll, the only thing we need to swing a roll call vote is if we're going into executive session. Other than that, you can just take a.
I was trying to associate your last name with the physical forms.
If you don't have the list right in front of you, and all we were like, you know, the.
Physical forms. All right, into old business, project updates.
Sure. As some of you may or may not have seen, we included the presentation in the board package. We presented to the town council a week ago Monday. And I think it went well. What we're seeking is obviously the easement for the land for the energy park. And it's going to be a bit more work than we originally thought. The reason is the land that we are seeking is town-owned land, and they're fine with granting an easement. But the way the town received the land basically had a covenant that said it needed to be used for a park. Well, that specific piece of land is never going to be used for a park. So there's a home, we need to file a home rule with it. So once we get, if we're granted the easement by town meeting for the land, we still have to go through an additional process, which means we go to the legislature and we create a home rule petition, which allows the town to reappropriate the use of that land for a different purpose. Most likely what we're going to have to do is identify a different location among town land that could be take over that park designation in the future. And Steve's already working on that. He said there's plenty of locations that they can identify to give that new designation to. And then there shouldn't be much of an issue. If you look at the land that we're seeking to take, it would not be appropriate for a park anyway. So we're at a point right now where it's just a matter of additional legwork it's going to take. So we're still in the process now. There's a few additional steps locally too. We have to make sure the CONSCOM and the planning board also sign off now. In addition to town council and in addition to town meeting, we need to have those 2 additional steps. We're already on the agenda for the planning board for their upcoming meeting, and then we'll go to the conscom as well. No, actually, it's the Park and Rec, which is under the DPW. So we actually have to go to the DPW for that piece. So there's a series of steps that are additional steps that it's going to take, but our legislators are all been, briefed to some extent. We're going to continue to keep them informed as we get to that next step. Right now, Tom Mullen and Mike see it as additional work, but not necessarily any major barrier, because if we're able to explain the situation and educate people on what we're doing with the property, and B, if we're able to identify an appropriate other location for our park, then that could be installed in the future, then we should be fine. Especially if it's even more appropriate than the current. So that's the current issues with the energy park. So we just gotta keep our heads down and keep moving forward. I don't know if anybody else has any park related questions.
Well, just because the site work is supposed to begin next year to keep everything on schedule.
Yeah.
So how is there any idea how long it would take for this project to be?
It could take into January, February, and March, but that doesn't mean we can't do other things in parallel now. The biggest issue we have right now is to try to get equipment ordered. So that's the biggest issue. So if we get to a point where we feel comfortable that this is going to happen, then we can start ordering that equipment, because a lot of the stuff is long lead time. So
Was it my understanding from that, Tom and Mike said that the November town meeting could be all of that would be one warrant article from the town to give us the easement, and then okay it to go to the state legislators for the park.
There'll be, yes, that part's true. We'll still have to separately visit the planning board, but we're doing that prior to the meeting anyway. So hopefully we can have that approval prior to the town meeting. And then again, the Park and Rec is basically the DPW, so they are under the town council, so their support we carry over. So that's kind of the biggest issue. Dave, are there any other items? I don't think there's
No, I mean, we're moving along. We're not delaying anything. We're still doing the design, still looking for them. People the layout of the guys. Still moving along.
So we had renderings done, and we included 2 pictures in the presentation of what what it would look like. We've tried to take into account some of the concerns about making sure we have it a little bit back further off the road, so that the front tree line is, the driveway cut is minimal, and most of it is still like tree coverage from the front side. We've done a tree analysis of what would have to come down. We tried to minimize that. And so I think, we're trying to cover all the bases for each step along the way. It's moving along. It's going to be a big project. It's going to take a long time, but I think, we're out of the gate anyway, so.
I said this is a lot of support for it. So everything done. It's been very simple.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk on Facebook right now about people are up in arms that the new book is going to be moved to a place that right now is forested and all that. So fortunately, we've been out of that, and I don't think that will impact us at all.
No, I think, and one of the things, obviously, is the issue of trees, and we're going to try to minimize what we can. We're also going to replace whatever we take down. We did an analysis. I think we're going to have to take 128 trees for our section, and we'll replace those trees in other parts of the town working with Dennis. So we'll keep the area where we're not there. We have part of the 1 acre is identified for future distributed generation. We'll leave the trees that are there until we get to some future date when we decide on another project. But we are going to take the big pines out of the way, because those can all fall on equipment. So we'll take the major pines and then the stuff in the construction area.
And there seems to be a lot of interest actually in learning how it would function, how, like different resources would function at different times of day or seasons or during emergencies, so. Yeah, that might be just something that we could do in the future as we go out to the community, is kind of describe what an emergency situation might look like versus like an everyday situation or peak hour or something like that. There were questions like, would battery be on at a certain time, you know, how would solar work, how would batteries work, when would come on and off?
We're talking about doing like a little 5-minute video, putting it on the website for people to do it. So Ann and Dave and I have been working on it. No, Burns, I think we talked about the fact that was actually de-energized the day of our last meeting, and what the guys have been working on basically since then has been taking down a lot of the old 4 kV infrastructure that was in place before, and looking at cleaning up that yard, and so there's some steps being taken for that right now, and then we had obviously 3 people leave for Florida for a little over a week, so. But we've, so the Burns in the remaining 4 kV that we have, I don't know if you, for the folks that have been around for, actually everybody here has been around for at least a couple of budget cycles. We've had 4 kV retirement in our budget for several years, because it's a multi-step process. We're down to right now 1 circuit on Wakefield Ave, off of Wakefield Ave, and then 1 step down area on Butler, coming from New Salem towards Water. That's all that's left. And so we're going to retire, except for the square, which is designed to stay 4 kV. So those 2 areas, the area on Water Street outside of Wakefield Ave will be retired this year. And then the plan for the capital budget will include Butler, and, you know, from Water to New Salem, that area will be next year, and then all the 4 kV that we're going to retire will be retired. So the major accomplishment to it. So 4 kV's been around for a long time.
No, get rid of that room substation.
Yeah.
So that's a big accomplishment. But it'll be draining in transformers and transformers probably this year. We'll be draining them this year, and we'll have a plan to scrap.
Yeah, and clean the site.
Yeah, we'll clean the site up, yeah.
The same type of transformers are at Wakefield Ave. Do you have the same type of that company that actually bought them from us?
Yeah,
Or some,
Yeah, the cost of disposal of the building. So yeah, it's very low.
looking for downtown, is that to remain at 4 kV or?
Yes, right now, we are extending the 13.8 down there. So on Albion Street, when they did Albion Street over, brought a feed down from, what's it called? What's that site? Foster, yeah, Foster, and then we brought it down to Main Street. So we have some there on the other side on Lincoln Street, we have some 13.8, and then on the back of Main, we have 13. So we're getting closer, but right now the plan is to leave it 4 kV. Then when we'll work with the town to do the Main Street over, we'll have to talk about any funding of and all those. It will probably bring 13.8 a little bit further in, depending on the development down. Because the duct sizes are very small, right? Exactly. So
Yeah, so that exactly what I was gonna say. Over the years, we've brought in 13.8 from multiple sides. So we also we brought in a lot of 13.8 when Brightview was built, and Sabatino was like from that area, from the Lafayette Street area, from Foster. So we're touching it from a few different locations. So we'll have the ability to bring it further into the square.
is it a step down there or is it on the side? No, it's out of power. So yeah, we have 2 transformers, 2 step down transformers that go out, and they feed out to certain transfer or downtown.
And one of the things we did when we did that project last year was those 2 circuits weren't tied. We built the tie on those circuits. We have multiple switching points now for what's left of the 4 kV.
And just thinking electrification, beneficial electrification, right? Yeah. I mean, the good thing is that as soon as we can grade go from one side of the main to the other 2, that will be helpful. So they do it over like Lincoln Street, there's Richardson right there, we can go across the street, so that will be good. So there's a couple spots down the other end, the same thing. Then we'll see.
And there's still that, 4K that's left there, there's still resiliency, reliability concerns that I know that there was a circuit with it last summer that was having an issue that you guys replaced out, or is that?
Upgraded circuit 3 and circuit 4, so relatively new cable on both of those. A lot of the underground transformers have been replaced. So we cut over anything that was kind of a weak link, older cable, we replaced that. We created a 3-foot tie as well, so.
The big issue is the tie. Those were backed up by other stuff out of Burns and out of Wakefield Ave before. Now they're linked together, fed by a new transformer with new cable. So,
Yeah, then we got rid of some of the cable that was really exposed because of the tracks to the other side. So that's eliminated, that's been converted. So we really have to put it in just the center, and a lot of work has been done. Like the other point, you know, and some of the other, which would.
where we are with that. I don't think anything else major on the project updates.
Update on the 480 North Ave. Says waiting on legal.
Yeah, we have to finalize the contract. Mike and Sarah and Dave have a meeting, and actually Mark have a meeting scheduled Friday. So,
Last week, the week before.
Yeah.
Really at this point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just find out the concept of the language, and then just the orders have to sign off.
Yeah.
So this could be installed by end of year,
I don't know.
or maybe not.
Yeah. I'd say that's.
becoming more,
Might probably because of the supply chain issues. They are pushing now, so they like to get it done. And in the winter it's not ideal, so. Which I'm not sure. I would say. So that.
all right, so he said, don't humble, Dave.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, but,
Okay. Anything else on project update?
Nope.
All right, let's go into select the EV Timothy Street.
So we shared some spreadsheets. So Jack, I don't know if you got a chance to read the email. So the numbers weren't wrong. What was wrong was we should have had clearer labels. So what the annual meant is annual capacity savings. And what monthly meant is monthly transmission savings. So on that spreadsheet, capacity savings is every month, monthly transmission for 1 month, and then he aggregated it on the second one. So it should have been monthly capacity savings, monthly transmission savings, annual capacity savings, annual transmission savings. The numbers were good, it was the labels could have been clearer.
Yeah, 'cause I couldn't make any sense. I kept looking, everything's annual and monthly. and then,
Yeah.
you know, annual times 12, and
Yeah.
I said monthly times 12 is monthly. And
Yeah.
it's $1.
We should have done it. So the way we get value obviously is the capacity peak is hit once a year. And we get a savings for that for the entire year. And then each month there's a transmission peak. And if we hit that transmission peak, we get savings for the month. And so we get a monthly transmission savings, monthly capacity, and then he aggregated it so for the year. So,
So how do you want to proceed with this discussion?
I think it's up to you guys. So I think what we would have to do next, if we want to proceed with the rate, we need to figure out if there's any more questions about the numbers. And then B, if we're going to proceed, Mark and I will have to create a rate sheet. And then we would host a public meeting and have a rate hearing and then file it with the department. We did so, I know Tom had some comments on some sample stuff. I don't know if you can just share.
Step A, it's kind of secondary to the rate. Right? Like once we figure out the rate, the question material is,
We just tried to throw something together.
yeah. But
Right.
one of the, looking at kind of the spreadsheets and wondering around and reading this correctly, the numbers on the connected solution versus time of use and folks understanding that and the installation cost of the meter socket and all of the wiring. I don't know if it's enough incentive for someone to do that. Also, just kind of checking around the cost of 2,000. Obviously that's an average across. 2,000 is probably going to be on the lower end of a fairly simpler install. I'm actually having this put in at my house, and just the circuit alone is 2,500. That's not the sockets and another panel. We're probably looking at 2,500 to 3 as a more realistic number for installation of that. So just kind of taking all those numbers aside and seeing, how folks. I wouldn't want to set the program up to not be successful if we're going to go through that.
I think there's a couple points to make on that. I was talking to Jennifer about it earlier today. I think we have to be careful not to try to incent everybody. That's why we're trying to give 2 options. And it might not be the right option for everybody. That's why we're giving 2. It's really going to favor customers that are obviously new construction, customers that have to upgrade their service and so they're already going to have an electrician in there because they have to go from 100 amps to 200 amps or something else. So adding an additional second meter socket and a larger service upgrade job is much more incremental than, doing it the way I'm doing with just single family where you're adding a separate meter. It's probably going to be the most costly in that scenario. So it's definitely not going to be a fit for everybody. So I don't think we want to try to solve that by throwing additional money at it because we're giving you another viable option already. So I think that's the point of that. Our goal as the utility is really to make sure they're not charging on peak.
Yeah, and that was kind of the, it's really in my mind is what is the behavior that we want to drive? If the behavior is if we want to drive, don't charge on peak, then, this scenario kind of works in that. And then the second one, doing the connected solutions, right? We get to kind of control that as well. So that both of those drive the behavior, which is we're trying to drive the behavior, don't charge on peak. That kind of.
And like I said, I think there's going to be people that choose to do it because they want to and they prefer to. And as Jen and I were saying earlier, if you have multiple vehicles or high charging vehicles, it's going to pay back quicker than a standard, just a simple one vehicle that's going to relatively slowly charge, versus maybe have 2 vehicles and it's depending on your usage, it's depending on the installation scenario. So I think we're just trying to build options right now so that depending on your situation, you can. One of the points that was raised really by Jen's additions to the spreadsheet was the issue of if you're going to go on the time of use rate, you have to make sure you're going to be charging off peak at least 88% of the time. If you charge more than 12% of the time on peak, it's not worth it. You're better off not doing it. So that if there's a number there, more or less based on this design that would say if you're going to charge on peak more than 12% of the time, you probably don't want to go to the time use. So,
and that's, I think that's kind of some of the commentary I have around the marketing materials that we need to be very prescriptive and educational around the benefits and the, what not to do, right? Don't charge on peak unless it's absolutely necessary. And then with the time of use rate, and this question of mine, how much flexibility do we have as the board to change both off-peak and on-peak, you know, as the economics change from a perspective? Thank
We got it online.
you. It's still not.
It's not?
Yeah, we can change the rates whatever we want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without a, like,
Well, I think what we were gonna try to do with with the rate sheet is try to give ourselves a little bit of flexibility within it, design, so we don't have to go have a hearing. But I agree with John, we could change it anytime we wanted to, but if we write the rate sheet properly, there may be some elements of it we could change with just a vote of the board versus, you know. So we're gonna look at language. Mark did one for Rowley, months ago, and so we'll look at some of that language and some other people's language to see where we can build in some flexibility of just changing some of those things with a board vote as opposed to, and then you just refile the rate or.
you know,
Yeah. I was gonna say, and also we're working on a frequently asked questions piece too. So I think once the rate structure is there and when we release it, there's a frequently asked questions to say, if you have two EVs, maybe this is, you know, maybe this is the program for you or this and that. And I think that kind of will help a lot with people, you know, having questions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So with that, I think, so the process we would have to use is if you decide, we'll create a rate sheet. I would suggest we probably share that, and there's a certain posting time for the public hearing. The public hearing probably wouldn't be till the beginning of the December meeting, I would think. So that we could, and you just give the public a chance to come in and make comments on it. And, you know, again, where this is an additional optional thing, not a mandatory. I don't think we're getting a lot of feedback, you know, a lot of objection to it. So I think, but then once the public hearing is held, we file a rate review. So there's still a few more steps. So the question becomes, do we want to do this?
Personally, I think having that option is that, you know, the options are good, right? In terms of whether it's for someone or not, that's why there's this option to go with the connected solution or with the time and choose.
Yeah, like I said, I was trying to think of the scenarios where I would want to do this. And probably the least would be an existing service with a 200 amp service already. I might not spend the money on it, but if I'm 100 amp service and I know I have to upgrade my service already because of electrification, then having two meter sockets is relatively incremental. It's, you know, it's going from a $150, $200 socket to a $500 socket. The incremental cost is relatively, and the labor is more embedded now. So that's one thing. New construction, obviously. So there's a bunch of other scenarios. Multi-families that, you know, we talked to Jack's place for a while. There's going to be a million different iterations of multifamily. So this may be a good fit in some of those locations, you know, but having more options is valuable.
Yeah, and you know, in the FAQ, we have another place that it may not be beneficial is someone that has solar, because they're not going to be able to feed from a billing perspective into their vehicle to get their solar benefits from there, or someone that's looking to use their vehicle you know, as a backup. And then the other part, as we think about this rate, that's kind of tied into my thoughts on changing the rate. You know, it's coming. We don't have it yet, but the vehicle to grid, where we start doing the virtual, you know, power plant with these vehicles on it, you know, how does that fit into the kind of use? How does that fit into the methods of stuff that we kind of need to think about that's coming at us quickly?
I don't think there's going to be more technology involved in that one. So I think I don't think that precludes either of these two things from happening. I think it's going to be something different that we're going to have to think about when we get to that place.
Hopefully to be looking at, we get at the highest level to interesting type.
Yeah.
All right, so if we're gonna go to a time of use rate, as we do whenever anyone in the country sets rates, you have to know what your target revenue requirement is. That's how you design rates. So you know you need to recover a certain amount of revenue to meet your costs, and then you divide it, that cost over the expected number of kilowatt hour sales, and you come up with the rate. So where I'm stuck on this proposal is that, so right now, if somebody were gonna charge their car, it would cost $525 a year to charge the car over the course of the year. If they go on the time of use rate as proposed, as long as they're doing 88% of their charging or more in the off-peak hours, then they're not harmed. But if they use, let's say, well, any amount more than the 12%, so if they're a 20 or 25 or 30%, they're going to be penalized quite a bit, and that is all additional revenue. But I haven't seen any numbers that tell me that the costs are going to be increased by the exact same amount as the revenue is going. So I don't know how the revenues that you're proposing here match up against the costs that we might incur. That's where I'm at a loss.
Well, so the savings that we generated for the 5 cents was based on the offset on the transmission and the capacity costs. That's where the savings came from.
But see, those are the costs that I couldn't find. I couldn't find any of that. So I still feel personally as if I need to see some sort of a sensitivity analysis that would say, so we're looking at two sets of numbers on the spreadsheet. One would be the customer numbers. So assuming different levels of charging off peak versus on peak, then that would, and then how many electric vehicle customers are on a time of use rate in the first place. And then we know what the total projected revenue is coming. And then for the exact same variations in how much you're going to be charging on peak versus off peak for each of those different variations. So let's say you come up with 4 different scenarios. Let's say in scenario 1, 50% of your users are in fact charging 88% off peak and only 12 on peak. And then the other 50 are maybe at 25% charging during peak hours. So that could be one scenario. And then for that exact scenario, what would be the cost and the savings on the capacity and the transmission and all of it.
Joe, you want to call it the spreadsheet? I think some of that information is already there.
Yeah, I mean, I can call it up, but I think some of what he's asking for is I think there's assumption to be made about how many people are going to be on the program, which is something.
Yeah, and I couldn't see anywhere where there were any
we have
assumptions.
actually zero idea on.
Yeah, I mean,
The base, some of that, we have any modeling data from,
So we tried to make it revenue neutral as close as we can to the current rate they're on. Don't forget, we don't have on and off peak right now. We have a fully, all-in rate. Right. So what we try to do is say, there's a break-even point. If everybody's in an all-in rate right now, right? So we don't have an on-peak and an off-peak component. It's 100%. Right. And now we compare that to somebody who potentially switched to this time of use just for their vehicle. And what would we be saving? What would we, if they followed the 100% of the time they charged off peak, then the savings would be X, and we apply that to the rate. So it's revenue neutral.
Oh, so those are the numbers I haven't seen then. So how many?
Those have been in there.
All right. Well, I didn't see it in the same format as.
yeah. So what I can show you here, I don't know.
Zoom in on it, Joe.
Yeah,
What's that?
Zoom in on it.
I don't know what you're saying. Sorry, I can't.
Make it bigger.
bottom right-hand
Oh,
corner.
make it bigger?
Yes.
Yep. Sorry, I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
So basically this is a cleaner version of, I think, what you're talking about here is.
Oh, can you make it even a little bit bigger?
Yep, I can do that. So basically our avoided costs are going to be the same for one, so this is looking at one person. The avoided cost, the calculation is based on, what you've seen here. It's 20% of the ideal scenario. The ideal scenario would be if that one person was going to charge at every single monthly peak at that time and the annual peak at basically full capacity on that charger. So it was pared down to 20% because that's the number that's what makes the most sense. It's based on a study that was done that says during the peak time, 20% of people were charging, let's say at 6 o'clock at that time, or at 7 o'clock, it's 21%. So it's a number that's around what the data shows. So basically, given that that number doesn't change, the only number that changes is the customer benefit. And so what I did was I played around with just saying, okay, let's say that they do 98% off peak, because if you sign up for this program, if you put some money forward, you're not gonna, most likely you're not gonna charge 88% to 12, I would think, because if you're in it for some capital investment, I mean, why would you do 88 to 12? It's good to know that that's the break even point, but it's probably going to be something more like this. So if you get the average electric vehicle, this is the customer benefit, this is our benefit. If you get like a Tesla or a high range vehicle, it's going to be this. Then let's say you have two average vehicles, it's about 6,000 kWh per year, then it's this. So we're $25 over what their benefit is. But let's say you have two Teslas, now the customer benefit outweighs our benefit. So I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about. It's kind of as a one person that then you could multiply it out to 50 people. And so that's kind of that side of things.
Okay, yeah, so I see a couple of problems. When I'm talking about the revenues have to meet the revenue requirement under this scenario, and there's only one scenario here, which is 98% off-peak charging.
Sure.
But under that one scenario, the customer doesn't benefit as much as the light department. So that means the light department is collecting more revenue than it needed. But in any event, the other thing, though, like I think, Joe, you understand that I'm saying, is I'd like to see a sensitivity analysis that says, okay, so now we're actually over earning. And what would the situation be if it were in fact 88% instead of 98%, as well as if it were only 75% off peak and 25% peak? Then what does that do to our revenues versus our costs? Because I don't think we're supposed to be trying to generate revenue off of these rates. We're supposed to be still revenue neutral.
Yeah, so it's not, so the 245 isn't, I mean, it's not revenue per se, like that, it's not like we're generating that revenue. Like I think
from an accounting perspective, the avoided cost versus, revenue generation, how does that account?
We would be passing on the savings, we're a conduit, we're passing on the savings that we achieve in avoided cost, passing it through to the customer, right?
So that goes in the fuel charge?
It's not really, no. It's not really a revenue side. So if you look at like on the bottom one, 220 and 245, so the department has avoided $245 in cost in that scenario, right? We passed on in the lower rate, 220 of that to the customer, leaving a $25 delta, right? Mm-hmm. So at some point, that $25 delta needs to pay for what we have. The thing we haven't talked about is the incentive, any incentive we may give to the customer if they're on, right?
Talked about that $1,000, $600.
Right, so how is that incentive funded as well?
So we've all these numbers, so that's why I need to see the numbers. So, I mean, do you know where I'm coming from? I'm not trying to be a pain.
No, in a traditional rate making sense, absolutely. And I see exactly, because that's traditional rate making sense, that's best practice, that's how it's always been done.
Right.
This is a new concept, you know what I mean? This is a new concept. And it's a close cousin to the traditional rate making process.
Right.
But it's on the avoided, it's not on the revenue side, it's on the avoided cost side. So we're not
Right, but yeah,
we're not buying power for a penny and selling it and billing it back for a penny. Revenue neutral, right? You buy power for a penny, you sell it back for a penny. Right. We're on the other side, we're on the flip side of the equation. we're avoiding 245 and we're giving back 220. Right?
Right.
So it all boils down to what's in the power, to what's in our power bill monthly from, and what you say.
With the monthly,
It's buried in- it's not, you know, it's not buried in, it's not buried in.
The way I see it, and this is the way it should be, the more electric vehicles you have and the more that are on these rates and not charging on peak, there's a benefit to those customers who have those vehicles, and then there's a benefit to all customers in the system, and that's the avoided cost, right? Every customer is gonna benefit from each
Yeah.
and every electric vehicle that is not charging on peak, which is the way it should be, in my opinion.
And
It's
to an extent, it is reflected in the fuel charge, because to the extent that we can make our overall NWEC power bill a little bit lower, that is reflected as we set our fuel charge. You know, so if our power bill from NWEC is that fraction smaller, that's reflected on a monthly basis based on what we set the fuel charge.
Jack, it might be better to kind of, instead of thinking this as a rate, but framing this in the mindset of peak shaving. This is just like any of our other peak shaving programs that we have, the connected homes is connecting to the thermostats. While there's not a rate attached to that, we as a utility send out a command during the peak to reduce, you know, in summertime, so turn the thermostat up a couple of degrees, reduce the system load, which benefits all ratepayers, even though, you know, the 200 customers that are signed up for that, you know, that T-stat went up 3 degrees, and they're not pulling a demand down. That saves us all because we're not, you know, we're reducing our, you know, monthly peak, yearly peak, and, you know, the transmission and capacity charges that we all collectively pay. So it may be easier to kind of frame this in that aspect of,
I don't see how that has to do with the revenue, the total revenue, the total revenue.
Again, I think the way we built this is it's trying to be revenue neutral because we're still charging the distribution charge the same. This
Right.
is just on the power side.
Okay, and I know you're saying that, you're saying that you decided to be revenue neutral, but you haven't shown me any numbers where the total revenues are in fact going to be the same under these various scenarios, but under the sensitivity now.
Well, again, this only applies to the power side. So so distribution cost, like allocation to commercial and on the.
Oh, no, of course, right.
Okay, none of that matters. We've left that alone. So it really is only in the power side, right?
Right.
So we have taken this to look at what if they participate correctly, then what's going to be reduced? What's going to be reduced is energy is obviously not going to be reduced because they're still going to use the same number of kilowatt hours, regardless of when they do it, whether they use it at midnight, 5 p.m. or whatever, they're still going to use it. What's going to be reduced is capacity peak and transmission peak. Those are the only things. So that's what's showing up there. Those are the only things that are changed.
Mhm.
So, and that's why we did the scenario like, and if there is additional benefit of the more people that do it and we do, then as Jen said, it cascades across the board. If fewer people, the other thing is on a month-to-month basis. So, you know, we can make assumptions about who we think might be wise. But Joe was saying, you know, some of the data that we have from like Austin or Sacramento was reflected in picking these scenarios. So, but there's still not a ton of data out there on this either. So it's
I
just
mean,
kind
we
of,
could certainly put together a quick spreadsheet with those assumptions, you know, the assumptions, what is being assumed, right? Because I think the other question I had is, you know, are you assuming in this rate setting that they'll charge 100% off peak? And I think you said yes, you know, you're assuming that in the scenarios. So we certainly could do that, and we could demonstrate for 5% of customers, right, that are enrolled versus 60%, you know, do a couple different levels and show that.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know where the numbers came from. So you're saying, okay, so they would get 5 cents less on the off-peak hours, and then they would pay 400% additional during the on-peak hours. And why would it be 5 times instead of 4.5 times? But what's the difference in overall revenue?
Well, isn't that reflecting the differential between what we pay
Right.
for on-peak and off-peak hours?
Right.
With a little bit of wiggle room. though.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to, and we're also trying to keep it kind of clean and, you know, we don't want it to be 4.371 because we try to explain that. The whole idea of the penalty side of it is to make it simple to understand. The penalty is big if you charge up. You know, so, that, and, you know, some of those time of use rates are, you know, they try to simplify. Like Groton does well, they were doing the 440 and now they're doing the 570 or something like that. They've tried to keep it very simple because the more complicated you make it, the less understanding and less uptake.
I mean, I think to that point, like, it's an educational tool to say, we pay everyone
Yeah.
pays 5 times more, right? That's inherent in your rate. And everyone should realize that, right? And when you bring on new load, you know, we're trying to avoid bringing it all on at 5 times as much as what we, you know,
Yep.
what we could otherwise pay.
Well, we can prepare a few more scenarios, like we can compare some scenarios. Maybe by next month, we could try to come back with more scenarios and a proposed draft rate sheet.
It's not necessarily the same, but do we have any sort of modeling or data around uptake of where, like Groton, where they have the what is it, 570 now, on just kind of how their load is impacted with the 70 cents time of use rate.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
Groton
kind
has
of,
a whole study on it. Yeah, I mean, it's actually on their website. It's pretty interesting. But they ran it as a comparative pilot for 2 years. I haven't seen his data for this year when they had like a handful of people that opted into it in the first year, and then they did a comparison group of this is what it would have looked like if you had gone. But there's also some data for more specifically the utilities like Austin and Sacramento that have the time of use for EV.
Yeah, I mean, I think among other things, this is a great advertisement actually for the Connected Solutions program for EVs, because that will be what the vast majority of people would sign up for.
Yeah, especially in existing scenarios, like if you own a single family home that's an existing, you used to have a charger, it's probably still better to do connected homes. But again, depending on your scenario, and if you're gonna, like we said, if you're gonna do 2 chargers and you're gonna do, you know, 2 vehicles, and then it starts to shift towards being more beneficial to do the time use rate.
But I mean, the thing about connected homes is it's $120 of savings a year, which is pretty easy money to get.
Yeah. Just
Right,
by,
so
just by programming your charger for it.
Just like programming the charger,
you're
$120 in the bank without much effort on your part and no upfront expenditure.
Yeah.
So that
Have your
is a
charger.
pretty easy sell for the vast majority of people.
you don't even need to program it, just have it connected. And the utility says, all right, beep, and then
Yeah, so as much as I want to bang on this program, I mean, I think the reality is that the vast majority of people will be doing the Connected Solutions program in the early years, and this is really going to be for the specific kind of new construction circumstances where there really isn't an upfront cost because it's part of the building construction anyway, so it's not really.
Well, like I said, in another scenario where you have 100 amp service, you definitely have an EV. You know you're gonna have to upgrade your service, so you're already making that capital investment. So now it's incremental. All right, so we'll Dave and Mark and Joe and I can work on.
Yeah, I mean, it might make sense for me to come in and sit down with Joe for a while and just, that's why, because I think he understands what I'm looking at, what I'm thinking about. And maybe the 2 of us can sit down, Joe, I don't know how you feel about that, and Pete, if that's okay with you. And then share it, or I can sit down with you, and we can look at it and see if they want to.
I mean, this isn't the type of thing that has like we got to get this done by tomorrow. You know, so it's it's fine.
I think it's good to see it at the system level, and I kind of added the customer perspective so we can see.
Yeah, I definitely needed to see that.
Yeah, like, what savings this year.
But I'm still confused about with something else in particular, which is, let's just say we go with the smart charging, which then leads to the connected homes obligation at the end of 3 years, right? So if they want to go with the EV smart charger, they have to sign up for a 3-year period of curtailment, after which they go on connected homes.
Yes.
And then there's no more curtailment, only in that first 3 years.
No, the curtailment is so the charger, either one, whether you're under the initial 3 years. So the benefit to you is you got the charger for free from the utility. So you save $650 or, or less depending on the, so you get the charger. Utility gets to control the peak on that. But then it gets signed up in the connected homes and we still control the peak. And the difference is as long as you participate in those peaks, you get the $10 credit. So you're not getting the initial 3 years, you're not getting the $10 credit. So you're doing the same thing that you were doing in the previous for those, basically the first 3 years, the incentive was the charger. After that, you just continue to participate as you were, you're just getting the bill credit of $10 for the month, as long as you.
In other words, yes, they are still being protected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so why does it say at the conclusion of the curtailment?
That's the initial 3 years. The curtailment program would be the initial 36
So
months.
the-
There's probably better words.
Yeah, and
So there is no conclusion to, so this just needs to be rewritten.
but that's what we're referring to as the initial.
And then the part down here where it says the customer can override the curtailment, but will forego the rebate.
That's a connected home.
So that's,
What happens in the initial 3? Like if
Well,
someone,
that- yeah.
or do they have the option to?
They can't.
They do. Okay, so they can't, so that's when it changes the customer will have the ability to override after the 3 years.
They can basically,
3 years.
after 3 years, they can opt out of participating.
So this is also incorrect. So the customer cannot override the curtailment.
No, in the.
Oh, exactly, yeah, because the curtailment, when it talks about the conclusion of the curtailment program, meaning the curtailment of the 3-year initial period, that's what they really did. So when it says you can override the curtailment, that refers to that 3-year period. No, it refers to the third, unless it were rewritten correctly, in which then it would make sense. But right now, it says the curtailment, and the only other times where curtailment is mentioned refers to the 3-year period. That was throwing me off. I thought it was telling me that they could override during the first 3-year period. So they can't do that. So, yeah, I'm happy to rewrite this so it makes sense, because there's just too much that's just not exact. And because like last time you said that it was gonna be 6 times the energy charge, and now it's only gonna be 5 times. So this needs to be written perfectly in order for me not to get all confused. And if I'm getting confused, the customer's not gonna know what they're talking about.
And that was just some of the feedback. Jack is touching on some of the feedback I had around.
Yeah, this is only a first pass, if you guys are looking for an example.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I think
that's
it's a
fine, that's fine.
good framework to start with. I gave Joe some specific feedback around different parts and pieces. Like happy to review it or just Joe can take it and run with it on the second.
Actually, it would be helpful if we could hear.
Sure.
I could hear what he's provided.
Like so, on the proposed EV meter, on the, some simple things is on the cost comparisons. So we're comparing, current gas prices. Well, last month's prices and this month's prices are different. They might be different in 6 months. So put the number that we utilized on that. The rational numbers of the electric vehicles, where did the 0.033 come from? Is that based on, 1,000 kilowatt hours per the month? Is that based on the number of miles driven?
So just, we can take care of them in the frequently asked questions.
Yeah, so some, just basing on where did these numbers come from? And how did we derive them? And I know not getting this too wordy, but having those simple things. And then I think impactful would be some of the, once you have those, where they derive from, in the, time of use, potentially save up to X dollars over, the existing rate with the, current smart charging program. Something that I kind of shot this around to folks that had EVs. One thing, nobody realized that they had this, the time of use based on this and this alone. They didn't realize they needed to install a second meter. That was unclear. So again, whether that's in the FAQ or in this, we're going to need to do a lot of education through this document as a starting point, and then the FAQ as well.
I think it would be helpful if you guys all share your comments on it. At meeting, I think the plan was to have like a FAQ on the backside, so you give us all your comments, we'll try to incorporate all that.
But I have another question I want to bring up, which is that, so after the initial 3-year period, if they're going with the smart meter, or smart charger, sorry, then they have to go onto the Connected Homes program. And then the sentence ends, it doesn't say for how long. I mean, after 20 years, do I still have to stay on the Connected Home programs? After 10 years, can I finally say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore?
You can
Opt out at any time.
You can opt out at any time. I think the premise with the contract that we have now, just after 3 years, you're done, you have it. We as a utility and driving behavior, we actually want people to sign up for the Connected Home. So it makes sense to auto enroll them right out as they come out of.
And if they decide they don't want to do it, then they can opt out.
Then they opt out. When you opt out, you're just foregoing the potential for that $10.
If you've been doing it correctly all along and it hasn't changed your life, you're gonna appreciate the opting because you're just gonna end up getting a $10 bill credit. If it's been a problem, you're gonna opt out. I don't think most people are gonna see it as a problem. But what we wanted to try to do, right now, there's no automated enrollment in the next step. So what we're trying to say by this is you're gonna automatically get enrolled in the next step and then you have to opt out.
Okay.
In my mind, it's only a benefit to be auto enrolled. Because the customer may not know that there's a Connected Homes program. So the behavior that they've been doing for the past 3 years, continuing that behavior would be rewarded with the rebate or the credit.
All right, so for actions for this, we'll do some additional scenarios. Jack can have meet with Joe. And anybody that has comments on this, we'll make sure we try to capture them all so that we can beef up this potential. Again, this was just the first pass based on, so it's kind of getting us out of the gate, but we know that we could do some work on that.
I mean, I think we have to be cautious about how much information. About this, we have to have supplemental information, educational information posted on the web. I mean, 8.5 by 11.
It's not a lot.
We're only gonna do some.
Yeah. No, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's right. We gotta, we'll have more on the website.
Right.
You can
yeah, this can
simplify
be-
it and say for additional details.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put links in and, bring another, based on the site, but I mean, this could be the main source of information with then hyperlinks to go to other locations.
Agreed, which in that case, we need to simplify it.
Yes.
Here's have an EV 2 options. Option 1 is the time of use, which requires either there's potential savings, or option 2, get a free charger up to $120 a year in bill credits based on utility curtailing your usage at peak times. Very simple, and then for additional details, go here.
So we'll work on that.
Can I ask one last question?
Yep.
Is there a reason why we're not using the Connected Solutions branding for this program and we're developing a new name?
Yeah, we're working on, I keep pushing for that and we're trying to keep pushing back, so I think ultimately we're gonna drive to that. We gotta remember we're playing with like 20 other players too, so.
Right. And we've got this program and
Yep.
it's connected with all these other.
I agree.
Stuff feels weird.
I've tried to push for that, I get pushback. My own stuff. But ultimately, that's where I'm.
One more clarification. So the $10 per month rebate is only after the first 3 years? That's only once they're in the
Yeah,
capital program?
Or it would be
Yeah,
potentially if they
yeah.
run their own charger.
Right.
That is capable of participating in the connected solution.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
could
so-
go,
That's why I mean, all that you're writing back is probably gonna end up being on the frequently asked questions or even on the website, because it's never gonna fit on a brochure.
Well, it will if it's written succinctly, yeah. I can write this stuff in like, in 3 bullets.
Okay.
It won't take, it's not that complicated, it can be written much simpler. And, so I'll work on that next week. And Joe, I'll reach out to you and, we'll schedule something probably for next week. Yeah, I think next week might work if that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not.
Right, then we can send something to Jen and you can get some feedback and then we'll have something for the board.
Yep. So, winter power supply, so we have somewhere coming next month for the electric forecast. They're still finalizing their winter forecast right now. We do have a rough idea. Spring's coming in December for the same issue. Right now, I just wanted to give the report. So our gas is up 12.6% over last year, and our electric is up 20.5%. And then, but you have to remember, compared to National Grid is up 64% on their electric and 22% on their gas.
The overall bill impact, or just,
Cents per kilowatt hour or CC or it's dollars per CC.
overall bill, not just the use. It's the commodity.
commodity of the question.
Can you give us those numbers?
Yeah, we're currently up 12.6 on gas percent, 1.5%.
What's the driver on the electric side being higher than the gas?
Well, obviously,
I mean, I know gas is nested in there, but it's smaller. It's
right, so the benefit we have is that we've been hedged as opposed to the electric is on the open market for the gas. So,
We're still on the shoulder.
and we're still in children's months right now. Our gas is gonna have to go up higher, but right now, and again, we'll have a better idea that once we try to reestablish our allocation for capacity.
Yeah.
that we-
It's on the gas right now, so it's not really.
Well, yeah, we're into fall gas now.
With that, I know I've seen you guys have put out, in the, webpage, social media items, energy supply costs in the news or what's going up. We do like another push with the resources that we have available. I know the Leo link, out there.
Yeah, we've been trying to do a lot on the Facebook. I'm gonna be at farmers markets and at Weekfield 101 and half days. So we'll keep reiterating those informational locations where they can actually talk to us. They've also called the office and we'll do it. I'm waiting to have a better number rather than just throw something out there, but I wanted you guys to be aware of where we're at. So the reason that we don't have, right now, our winter gas is 85% hedged. But that other 15% is wackadoodle. So so what we're trying to do now is make sure that we feel like, exactly. It's wackadoodle. So, yeah. And then on the electric side, it's the same. We're 85% on the electric side, but anything we're buying on the market right now is crazy. I get alarms from ISO when it goes above 50, 5 cents, 10 cents, and it never used to alarm, and now it alarms all the time, so.
From a communication perspective, would it make sense to send something to the customers?
Yeah.
So we're working on that as a bill insert, and also it's on page 50 in the packet.
But I just wanted to kind of give, so this is where we're at right now, and over the next 2 months, we're gonna have detailed updates from each of the bodies. Hamlet is scheduled for November and Sprague is finished. And the reason we pushed Sprague back, we're not doing it in November is because we're gonna, so one of the things that is limiting our capacity reallocation is that we don't have a full year of using more from the utility side from National Grid. We've only been doing it for 10 months. So we don't want to ask for capacity reallocation until we have a full year as well. So we have October and November left to do. And then, because we didn't start our switch last year until December. So he doesn't want to even ask for the reallocation of capacity until we've completed a full year.
Is this what you had in mind of, or were you thinking more of something that, because this tells people where to go for assistance?
No, I was
You were talking about
thinking more of like letting.
how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, how much you can, and again, that's why we're not ready to make those statements yet. So, but when we do, we're, yeah,
Everybody's saying.
yeah.
With that, have we seen an uptick, with everyone out there in the sphere, an uptick in folks taking advantage of the EE program?
I mean, overall, our rebates, yeah, trying to keep telling us every day, I'm doing 1 million rebates. So it's, I mean, we'll have stats on that next month, for budget time where we, look what we did this year versus what we had originally budgeted by category. But in general, I would say the overall rebate numbers are up in terms of the quantity of rebates.
Next year, when we see the biggest impact,
Yeah.
people start realizing.
Yeah. They can get the,
Yeah, that's the issue.
And supplies. Yeah. It's pretty out there.
So that's where we are on that. So again, I just wanted to make sure you had those numbers. Those are numbers. So, and they will be going up a little bit more, but we have been controlling it relative to our neighbors.
Question on did I misconstrue word here? I thought at the head of the lake, is it just the DC fast or are we putting a level 2 there?
No, just the DC.
So level 2s would be at the new construction project if it goes.
Yeah, no, I just for some reason it must have just at the last meeting, I thought I heard the garage.
Yeah, the garage is getting a level 2, but
Okay.
the head of the lake,
Yeah.
head of the lake is only.
Okay,
fast
only
charges.
at
So, yeah, so our grant was for 2 fast charges at the head of the lake.
Okay.
Yeah, the hot dogs, yeah.
But
Yeah.
Do we know the?
probably in the next 2 weeks, right? For the head of the lake charges.
Yeah, so,
They got kicked back because the crew said it, so.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah. With the foundations are coming in this week, and then we have to flag the buffer zone. So I'm talking to the engineering firm that did the surveying for the development, they have all the data. Then they'll survey the private property, they'll survey the buffer zone, flag it for us, and then we'll start to play the site and stake it out where everything's going. So I'd say in 2 weeks, we could start to have some activity at the site. As soon as we start doing that, I'll send you an email. You can tell the head of the lake folks.
Yes.
I'll let you know.
Did we look into coordinating with Mass DOT on that? I know they're looking into putting PCSD like that highway ramps,
So this is through Mass EBIT. So we applied for grant through Mass EBIT. The reason they give the grant and the reason we were selected is because our location met the criteria for high capacity chargers near the ramps, near on 128. So that's the reason we received that. So I don't know if Mass EBIT communicates with Mass DOT. I'm assuming they do because I know, yeah, but that's the reason they offer the grants to everyone. And one of the criteria is how close are you to the off-ramp?
And I'm working with my friends, but they want to install a minimum 4 PCFCs per location.
Yeah. That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we could have put 4 in this location, but having 2 is still. So we'll end up with, at the end of this, we'll have 3 DC fast chargers and 6.
Actually,
We don't want to sell it, done. So just.
Oh, that's right, we can.
Yeah,
Sorry, Sarah.
we'll just stay with the DC.
Yeah, we can answer some of those questions.
Yeah.
I'm like gripping onto my desk because I'm have so much anxiety. Okay, I'm fine. It's almost my turn.
That's they've actually put out all of the sites where they has plumbing. And you can see they're all along, like this is ours at the head of the lake. This is over at the Irving in Reading, Irving in Wakefield, and this is the Shell. And so I think I'm on Shell, but you can see that part of that grant, they have to be so close to the highway, but these 4 orange ones are common as part of the mass bid. Like they already seeded all of those sites into flood share
Oh, that's good, yeah.
as future sites. So you can go search for the bring up the whole map of the see where everyone got a grant. But
Okay, Sarah.
Oh, can I just say
Oh.
1 minute? So this assistance guide is really helpful. Thank you. It's like the first time I'm seeing all this in one place. I have a few little pieces of feedback. Do I send you or send that to you?
Either myself or Joey, doesn't matter.
And the one thing is really just, it says like contact us at various numbers, but I actually don't know what organization in some cases is being called. So I feel like that should be added on here. So the person knows when they answer, kind of who they're using.
Oh, let's say, as you go from the top down, the phone number for Leo would be, right? And then
What is this? Contact us at the first one. Is that WMGLD at 781-246?
6363 is
That's
it's
WMGLD.
project cost, yeah.
Then there's Leo. I think that one's pretty obvious. The next one's obvious, but then under the incentive rebates, take advantage of our free home energy audit, that would be SWAC.
Well, it's next zero,
Is
it's
it
run
next?
by, it's run by Amway.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it says call us about special financing options for energy efficient improvements.
Yep.
Is that a
We could give it,
different?
no, that's here, we could give, we've always handled the
That's
financing
WMGLD.
through
Okay.
here, so we could add, I mean, it's not a big deal to add that phone number again, yeah, yeah.
And then I would just, for the top 2, I would say like low income customers, like be really clear that those 2, I believe they're just for low income.
Yeah, no, they are.
Um,
Low income
And
energy
then,
systems.
yeah, incentives and rebates is all customers, so that's not.
Right.
Awesome, this is really helpful though, a really good resource.
Okay, Sarah. Breathe.
Okay, I'm just gonna share this real quick. Share.
Like JD Martinez.
What?
Like JD Martinez.
Oh, don't even get me started. Okay. You guys can see that, right? And can hear me? Okay. So just gonna go through a few things briefly. Starting off with the charger inventory here at our own facility that Dave has really been spearheading. We have 6 level 2 chargers now, 2 singles, 2 dual pedestals. They actually are not taking up much room. Not to say I was skeptical, but in the garage, it's a really busy place. But that's why I put a couple pictures here. That level 3 charger, I mean, it's almost non-existent there, which will be great for our full electric van. Excuse me. which is very nice. I know, Tom, you're waiting for that lightning to come to check out, but I don't know if you've had a chance to see the van yet, but it's nice. But we've got that going on, and then we have the level one, we have one level 2 charger down at the substation where our Leaf is located. We've kind of put that over there because the substation crew has been utilizing that, where there's 3 of them. That's worked out really well. Moving on to the electric fleet, which I'm sure you guys can imagine is a little bit of a challenge acquiring for our future vehicles. But currently what we've been able to do this past year is we did get that Ford Transit van for the gas service department. So that is here and is working great. We have that Leaf I just mentioned. We have Pete's hybrid Nissan Santa Fe that he seems, Hyundai Santa Fe that he seems very pleased with. I think we're going to be transitioning our passenger vehicles. What?
If I get laid off, I'm going to sell the Hyundai.
So we're going to, gradually as the Explorers come up to be replaced, we're going to be transitioning them to the same vehicles. So Pete's happy, we're all happy. But we're also struggling a little, as I said. I'm going to move on to the next slide. We have our bucket truck 13 on order. They got the chassis, there's more things that are, we're going with an all-tech truck. They were fantastic. They came in, they basically built it with us, but parts that they need that are not all-tech, they're just waiting on, and they're projecting we're going to get it in January of 2023. They have mostly everything. There's just some things that they're waiting on. So we're excited for that. The gas service van, that's the one that we own now. The pickup truck, that Lightning, Tom, we had ordered back in, let me see here, in February of this year. That Lightning, a 2022, they are building through the end of this month, the 2022s, but the dealer who we've worked with for a long time, who's very good over in Stoneham, he actually put in an order for us for the 2023. We did that back in July. So that way we would be, the order bank for those started in August. So if for some reason we don't get the 2022 at the end of this October, we will be at the top of the list for the 2023 when it first comes out. So we've been really proactive, which, but with help of people that we've had relationships with for quite some time. So that's been good. With that being said, that good relationship, he also let us know that when we purchased that gas service van, we're about to purchase another one, that the closeout for that was July 22nd. They didn't really make it very public because people are in such demand, but he reached out to us. And so we put in our order for next year's van before the cutoff date, before they call it the order bank closed. So that we should be at the top of the list for also to fulfill that one. We also just are working with actually Arlington Hyundai right now on our next passenger vehicle, similar, obviously the same as Pete's. So we're going back and forth that they're projecting 6 to 12 months is what they're telling people. They told us not to be surprised if it was 15, but that's the scenario for that. I think that's across the board for everybody. So, and then looking really far ahead, we actually just put in an email about a bucket truck for 2024 because they're taking close to 2 years. So a lot of ordering, but a lot of waiting. So, but we're in a good space. I feel like we've been so proactive that we're in a good place.
Can you back up, please?
Yep. There you go.
All right, so I want to understand this whole slide. So just looking at right in the middle, passenger vehicle.
Yep.
Says it's a plug-in hybrid.
Yep.
That 30,000, for a green option, 40,000. I don't understand. I thought that if it's a hybrid, it already is a green vehicle.
It is. It's just talking about how, what regular pricing compared to what the hybrid would be. It's a little bit more.
Oh, so the price is 40, not 30.
Yes, it's a little bit more, but obviously it's more cost effective along.
But, so the price, I believe, is what a gas vehicle or?
Correct. I guess that's what you're saying, yeah. So 40K is really the price. It's the price of the hybrid. So the title would have been green option price. And then the other column would have been non-green. option.
Yes, yes. I apologize. Yes. Sorry, it's hard to hear you guys a little bit, but yes, I apologize. But yeah, I should explain that. But obviously it's going to be a little bit more upfront, but you know, in the long run, it's going to save us some money.
With that, and I was actually gonna ask the question with the, you know, I know that we've only had the transit ban for 4 months now.
Yeah.
But when we get budget, you know, I know that we probably have, you know, what its fuel cost was for the, you know, previous year, what our electrical cost was, you know, minus that, and, you know, the savings, by having the transit van being electric. I'd like to see that.
Well, I shared a couple months ago, I'm on pace to use one, and mine will be 1 year next month.
Yeah.
I'm on pace to use 1/3 of the gas I used to use. So I used to use 960 gallons a year. I'm coming in at about 330. And that was based on a 10-year average of gas usage versus this 1 year, like I said, I'm on pace to come in at about 330.
Yeah, that'd just be good to have those, you know, with the transit van, to show the savings. with that.
We can put you on the two of you, right?
All right, go ahead, Claire.
Thanks, Aaron.
Okay. All right. This is going to be a little more tricky. So supply and demand just on everything. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, you know what's going on. They're very prevalent. The lead times for some stock is as far as 2 years. Tyler and Nick is new with us. They've been doing a great job reaching out for lead times. I think having great relationships too with our vendors and some of the people being on a smaller scale, it's very helpful. Tyler actually entered into this 1-year agreement we signed with Irby to help with our gas lead times. What they're doing is they're housing an annual average of our stock. They're over in West Boylston. And we're communicating with them any, you know, additional projects or things. We're about at like 4 months now. They said it would take about 6 months for it to completely show. But they will house our average and we will only pay, you know, when we need. If for some reason this didn't work out for us, we would just have to buy what they have ordered. But we have noticed already what a difference it is that compared to other companies, other municipalities, I should say, that it's really helpful. And with that being said, Wesco, we had on the electric side in today. So we're going to be within the week signing an MSA with them also to do something very similar. They're going to consider it a bond inventory. So basically they'll get an average. They picked up their list today when Dan Chase came in, and they're going to order and keep an average. And we're just going to communicate with them on bigger projects that come up that maybe we just have to communicate. That's all we can do during this. So we've created a new overstock room. We created shared stock list drives with each department and the supervisors. You know, with more technology, we're getting a tablet for down at dispatch, just so that way everything can just move a little quicker and we can just stay on top of the stock and inventory problems. There's also been a lot more meetings where we didn't have to do that before, with just communicating with each other and letting each other know about projects coming up. Transformers are, I've sat with Vinny quite a few times about this. We are purchasing new transformers for his projects. The needs out to 24, 25 with things that we know about, things that we're, going to adjust to with developments and everything like that. We also have been buying refurbished transformers, more out of, that's our only choice right now. And to get it in a reasonable amount of time. But Vinny's been great about that. He's always planning. And just before going into just to wrap up on the bids that we have, another thing that we were meeting with Wesco about today that kind of just has come about is also with the hurricane. That kind of has thrown basically whatever stock that people have is now gonna, within the next week, if it's on hand, is gonna be mandatory for them to be sending down there. So they pretty much told us to, in the next 24 to 48 hours, order as much as possible. We went over every single item, highlighted things, things like that. He was good about how they don't use the same type of, obviously I don't work in the electric department, but how we can substitute for some things, but also how they are, what was it that they use down there? Are they more open down there, the Florida and things like that for the electric? We use different products up here. We have different weather. So we just put it in, we put in an order and tell we can get as much as we can before, not to not be helpful to Florida, but we need it to.
But as
And
it's a big difference in the construction at a general level.
that's what I mean. Yeah, like I was trying to write down, I've learned more about electric in the last week or so, but even things to, he helped us out too. There's some single phase poles for next summer. They're going to get them in April. So we just put in an order for 12 or 15. I just think a lot of our work too, we've been planning ahead. Vinny's been really good about is, yes, we have big projects that we want to do, but if for some reason with the supply and demand, we can't get the stuff that we need to create those, we're still going to need to work and doing those fill-in jobs like running secondary, replacing porcelain cutouts. So we can't just forget about the fill-in work that we need. So we need to bulk up our stock on that stuff in case we can't get, if we have to push down a little bit down the road, some of those bigger projects.
How much is the stock bulking impacting budget, both on a top basis and just having the oversupply here?
I mean, obviously, overall stock has gone up. We'll see it in the next budget a little bit, but I think the partnership arrangements that we've had has been helped because we don't have to take it onto the books until we have to use it. So, so there is a budget across the board on everything, but they've been trying to set it up with Irby and with Wesco is helping a little bit to keep it, because they're keeping it on stock.
Yeah, it's something that
early, we use basically the old Eversource / Boston Edison spec underground cable and Hendrix cable. So we use an existing spec. So they kind of do the same thing for us. We don't have to keep mountains of cable here because we can get it out of Boston pretty quickly because they're sitting on so much of it for Eversource.
And that was another thing that they talked about today specifically was with Hendrix, is that where any of those types of things that we need from them, we're doing okay. They're a huge company in areas like he said, Sacramento, the Midwest, but not nationally. So Florida is not going to really need that stuff. So we should be fine in that department, but definitely with this relationship where they're housing it, I guess they've been doing that with larger companies, and it's just starting to trickle down to the smaller companies now with everything going on. So I think it's going to be extremely helpful.
Years for each one of them. Have you thought about putting out some actually on customer jobs, like you need a 1,500, 2,500 kV. Right now, we're a very large customer that we have. You know, I'm communicating, Vinny's communicating with them very early on what the lead times and the expectations. That they're 86 to 90 feet out. So they know that. And just this development that we have down here, I've been telling them for at least 8 months, the lead times on transformers. And they're not ready to pull the trigger on wanting the place to be wet again.
That project's become very,
Yeah,
50-50.
yeah. So,
If I were to bet my house right now, it's not that. So they've been very, very skeptical about getting started.
yeah.
That building should already be down. So
They should.
I don't think it's gonna
And
go.
they should have already told me, to go ahead and place the order. Place me a check for a couple of grand.
Yeah.
To buy the transformer. They won't do it until the first quarter of next year. Right, so I had to tell them that we won't have the transformers until they place the order.
The end of
Quarter,
24,
Until
at the
24,
earliest.
25, yeah, exactly. So they know it, and they totally can't hold us responsible or expect us to provide service. If they're, waiting 8 to 9 months to place an order. But the other side is that on the refurbished pad mounts should get a little quicker. So we have some spares that have been ordered, and we'll use those. So we haven't explored any rental options, because right now we're small enough that we work very closely with the developers. As soon as they get into town, we set the expectations early with them, and then we're able to place the order. And right now, we're be confident that if they are with us, to place the order early, then the in-service date will be fine. If they delay like they're doing down there, they'll put their project at risk. There's nothing we can do about that, other than possibly going with a refurbished that comes in sooner. Those refurbished are basically our emergency stock. Yeah.
And, on this, it talks about refurbished transformers here, and it's half the price of a new one. It's the same warranty as a new one, and it's 20 years expected. How much is the expectancy of a new transformer? Is it more than 20?
Say, yeah, more than 20, yeah, more than 25. Yeah.
Oh, it's that much.
Yeah, yeah, it was like the depreciation. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But again, in this market, in this time, it's the stopgap we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, some special units I've seen. Yeah.
Well, it's half the price, but half the life expectancy, there's no harm there.
Yeah.
Good job, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Yeah, these are just our bids coming up that we have going on, but that's traditional. There's nothing really affecting those, so. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Sarah.
Thank you.
Oh, jeez.
Thank
Okay.
you, top guy that sit next to you.
The kids are basically outside right now in my non-heated sunroom. So,
Hold up. All right, thank you.
thanks.
Noticing that we had Michael McLean with us which is our liaison with the town council. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Did you want to, we did comments earlier for you, but did you want to have mention anything right now?
No, just, for the members of the meeting here that, weren't, raptly watching the town council meeting, just to report that, you and Peter stopped by, made I thought, a very succinct and good presentation on the energy park and the ARPA requests. We're just relative to ARPA, now all 7 of us are going back through the town administrator and kind of, because we have about 5 times the request than we have the money. So we're all going back individually and talking about our priorities, and, hopefully we'll come to some conclusions in the next 2 to 4 weeks or however long it takes. I think only a couple of us have already, kind of chimed in on that. So it's a process. And I think the initial energy plan that you had proposed, the low income assistance, if I'm a handicapper, I'm thinking that that's probably, a good bet, but no guarantees as to what 7 people are going to, vote on. I'd really like to see the second aspect of the proposal, the solar project over on Audubon. I say Audubon, I'm sorry, over on Broadway. That was, I think, 225,000. I'd personally really like to see that one go through as well. But, we have $6.5 million and $30 million plus in requests. So we're just going to have to get through all that. So stay tuned and I'll keep you informed. Other than that, just wanted to observe, and thanks for having me as usual.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're to the end of our meeting then.
Well, blame Sarah for going past 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock feels really great compared to the last one.
Thank you for having me, guys. I know I get nervous, but
Thank you.
It's only been.
Okay, so I will take a motion for adjournment.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Measure passes unanimously.